Security has always been a passion of mine. I've always viewed it as a chess game. We're always trying to stay one step ahead of the bad actors that are out there.
You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by D-Link Technology. Make your home smarter, safer, and truly seamless. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and our guests today are Chris Paffrath, the Director of Safety and Security in the U.S. with Ingram Micro, and Bill Votsberger, the Senior Manager with Corporate Security at Ingram Micro. Welcome, Chris and Bill. So excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Carrie. We're happy to be here.
Yes, thanks for having us.
So today we're chatting about how to prevent fraud in your business. But before we get into that, I know that you both started out studying the same sort of thing, criminology and criminal justice. Can each of you give us a brief overview of why security is something you're so passionate about and what your role entails now at Ingram Micro? And Bill, we'll start with you.
Well, I've been with Ingram Micro now for about 14 years, and in my current role as Senior Manager for Corporate Security, I assist Chris in maintaining our physical security programs at all of our U.S. facilities and conduct fraud investigations reported to our fraud network. Security has always been a passion of mine. I've always viewed it as a chess game. We're always trying to stay one step ahead of the bad actors that are out there that are making attempts to try to thwart the security programs of our companies and our partners.
Yeah, and for me, Carrie, I always kind of joke I was raised on security. My father was law enforcement and then worked 30 years corporate security with United Parcel Service. So I was kind of raised on the craft of security, but I was originally pursuing law enforcement myself and then had an opportunity at Ingram Micro about 14 years ago and jumped at it and have not really looked back since. My current role as the Director of Security for Safety and Security is obviously to protect the folks, the Ingram Micro associates, as well as the assets and the brand name. So we certainly got into, much like Bill, we get into this job because we want to do something different every single day. And I think security offers that opportunity for us. And then, I think ultimately we want to help. So we're helping our organization, we're helping the people within our organization and even our customers and value-added resellers.
Yes, and we definitely appreciate that. Can you provide us with some stats or data on fraud? For example, how likely it is to happen to a business and why should an organization be more concerned about it?
The likelihood of someone experiencing fraud, whether it be an organization or personal, is high, probably nearly 100%. If you think about it, we see it on a regular occurrence. Most of us ignore it now because we're used to it, but it's either in our personal emails, even in our mailbox at home, the robocalls that we might get. So the likelihood of interacting with fraud or being subject to a fraud attempt is high. Whether you fall a victim to it is another story.
And let's face it, fraud really is a growing industry. I mean, one attack in particular, a business email compromise, has seen a 100% increase in identified exposed losses reported to the FBI from May 2018 through July 2019. The FBI lists those dollar losses for this fraud at $26.2 billion over the last 3 years. And that's just for one specific type of fraud. I think the Certified Fraud Examiner's 2018 report to the nations even said on average, most businesses will lose 5% of their annual revenue to fraud. So it's out there, and it's a high probability that you will have to deal with it eventually.
Yeah, I just heard that number recently, $26.2 billion over on the TV, which is craziness. One of the top ways fraud is happening is through email. What does a fraudulent email look like today, and how is that information being taken?
Well, with a business email compromise attack, it looks no different than a normal business communication. In this attack, a criminal will compromise a customer's email account through the use of social engineering or other intrusion techniques. Once inside the reseller's network, the attacker will then be able to send and receive emails using the business's legitimate email domain. People who receive these emails will be completely unaware that they're talking to a criminal and not the sender listed in the address. What makes the attack so devastating is the criminal will have access to all the company documents that were sent over that email account. like PO purchase orders, for instance. The bad actor will be able to request and approve quotes for materials or even transfer funds. So an email compromise is a devastating attack on a reseller, and it looks no different than just a normal business email.
And so that gets taken just from that one response.
Yes, one phishing attempt, one click on a link with malware, going to a fraudulent landing site, getting your network ID compromised is all it takes, and those attackers are then in your network.
Now, it's been said that phishing scams are more common now than malware. What is a phishing scam, and what are some recent ones that businesses should be on the lookout for?
Well, phishing emails are becoming more and more difficult to spot. The days of the poorly worded Nigerian prince emails are gone. They just don't exist anymore. Bad guys are always improving their delivery system. But the one thing you can always count on is these emails will always follow a normal pattern. They will always incentivize through a threat or reward. The email will threaten a debit memo, an outstanding memo that will require an end user to log into a page to provide banking information. Or they'll offer a reward through future government contracts. The emails will also request personal or sensitive material. There'll be a need for a high sense of privacy or urgency because they want to defeat fraud protocols. The email will contain links or attachments to deliver malware to steal credentials. Oftentimes, you'll still see a lot of spelling and grammar mistakes in these emails because they're being written by people who, for the most part, English is not their first language. The emails will oftentimes appear canned, or when you're reading them, they'll feel like they're coming from a template. They're not very personalized, like you would expect from a normal email.
Before we jump straight back into today's episode, we wanted to let you know about one of the industry's most important events, Ingram Micro's One 2019 event on November 18th through November 21st at the Gaylord Rockies Convention Center. One is your chance to experience what's new and exciting in security, IoT, cloud, and more. Also, you'll be able to network with other businesses, industry experts, Ingram Micro associates, and our vendor partners. Contact your Ingram Micro representative for details on how to register today. All right, let's get back to the show.
Now, there's also been quite a few attacks now starting to happen through messaging apps like Slack and Facebook Messenger. Why is this now the new place for scams to happen, and what does that look like?
So as how we communicate evolves with each other, so will fraud. Social media and messaging apps, these are a large part of our daily lives and how we talk with each other. It only makes sense that criminals will target these as a high-value target for fraud. I also think people believe that these modes of communication are somehow more secure, they're less vulnerable than internet forums, phishing emails. I think we sort of let our guard down when we're using a mobile messaging app for some reason. But in all reality, an attack, whether it's coming through a phishing email or through a messaging app, will follow the same pattern. It will still have that same threat or reward. It will still have a request for personal information. It will still have a link. You know, it'll be the PayPal account scam that's telling you got to click on this link because your account has been compromised. And really that link's taking you to a fraudulent landing site that is there for the sole purpose of stealing your credentials. So really, it's no different. It's just the mode or the means of communication has changed, but the fraud is still the same.
Now, I know it's the internal teams that are generally the ones getting targeted on things like what we've been chatting about. Can you give some actionable steps that companies can take to prevent or at least limit the risk of this happening to their organization?
Yeah, if I would give you the top 3 actionable items, at least in my mind, first and foremost, you got to be a hard target against phishing scams. So sharing online, your job descriptions, your duties, your out of office, your hierarchical information, these are all things that a bad guy, a criminal is going to key in on when he creates his phishing attack or a spear phishing attack. Opening emails from unknown parties, not scrutinizing the email address, not forwarding emails, but replying to emails. By forwarding emails, you are correct. You are choosing the correct address from an address book versus a spoofed address. So really, these things that you can do to be a hard target against phishing are probably first and foremost.
Yeah, and
Also,
Carrie, I think I would add too that obviously those things that Bill called out are great examples of how we're getting attacked and what we can do to try and prevent it. But at the end of the day, we're asking our folks and people in general just to be more diligent in the interaction that they have. As you were talking about the messaging and the different ways of communicating with each other now in our world, it has made us more vulnerable. Gone are the days of the regular one-on-one interactions, face-to-face, and even phone calls. Now everything is done through electronic mail, instant messaging, you name it. But the vulnerability is higher now because there's less verification in a lot of ways in who we are communicating with and what kind of information we're sharing. So, really, a lot of this is just people being more diligent in what they do every day.
Now, where can people learn more about what we talked about today, and or where can they connect with each of you?
Now, for a Fraud 101 kind of education, there are a lot of great resources out there. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is probably one of the first places you can go. They put out a report to the nations every year that discusses fraud. The FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, abbreviated IC3, puts out public announcements on various types of fraud, their impact, and red flags that you can look for, which are advertised on their PSAs, which is a great resource.
And if they want to reach out to either Bill or myself directly, we obviously have LinkedIn pages that we can be contacted. Our email addresses would be found there. Also, within Ingram Micro, we have a fraud email, which is fraud.alert@ingrammicro.com. They can reach out through that avenue to ask questions or get more information, as well as report any kind of suspicious activity or something that they might be seeing. If for some reason somebody wanted to remain anonymous and report any information to Ingram Micro, they can do that through our hotline, which is 1-888-INGRAM2. That's INGRAM2. And those are just a couple different ways that they can reach out and report some information or ask for more additional information from us.
Great. And the last question we like to ask our guests on this show is, where do you see technology going within the next year? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Great. Well, speaking in terms of security technology, we're starting to see some very interesting things related to asset tracking, whether it be for our powered industrial equipment inside of a warehouse, our inventory as it moves either within the warehouse environment or from our dock door to the customer's dock door, even to the ability of tracking people. And that's something that we're starting to explore within our environment to see how we can better protect our assets as well as our associates. Certainly, I think drone technology and robotic technology is quickly coming to a place where it makes more sense in the corporate security environment. There's still some work to be done there, but I don't think it's long before they make that a regular tool for us in our day-to-day activities. I think video analytics will be something that we'll take more advantage of as the abilities grow and become more economical for us in the computer in the corporate world. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going on with technology. Again in the security space that I'm looking forward to watching grow and seeing how we can take advantage of it and use it in the programs that we run every day.
Technology really is becoming more decentralized, which also I think is a positive for security. Companies are looking to blockchain networks. IBM, for instance, is running trials to use blockchain-backed systems for supply chain monitoring. These systems will allow data to be verified over very large peer-to-peer networks before being securely added to a chain, which will prevent individuals from being able to alter individual blocks of data without having to alter an entire chain, which is virtually impossible. We're finding better and better ways to secure that technology, which is going to have vast improvements for not only our resellers, but for our end users.
Yeah, and then I think too, from a technology standpoint, whether it be personal, professional, security, whatever the case may be, going back to our ability to communicate or how we communicate, that's only going to continue to grow. Whether it be instant messaging, face-to-face. I mean, now even in our corporate environment, we're using instant messaging online. We're using Skype. We're using video conferencing. We're using all these different ways of communicating and interacting that don't require the one-to-one verification necessarily to say, I know exactly who I'm talking to. So yes, it's made our lives easier, but it's also made us more vulnerable. So from a fraud standpoint, I certainly see that piece of technology becoming more part of our everyday life, and then thus making us a little bit more vulnerable to the bad actors who want to take advantage of that.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your knowledge and insights today. And we look forward to having you on, I'm sure, again soon.
Well, thanks for having us, Carrie. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you very much.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram Tech Soul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Carrie Roberts and sponsored by D-Link Technology. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production by Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.